It is time for NASCAR Pit Stop right here on Fusion 93 KMSC Sioux City, the student radio voice of Morningside College. I'm Katie Copple, and we have a Fontana recap, as well as a Martinsville preview, and a whole lot more. NASCAR was off last week, of course, for Easter. Can't really, expect the drivers to race on a national holiday. But Fontana, about 2 weeks ago, was usually not known for its best racing, but this year that wasn't the case. The Sprint Cup Series race from Auto Club Speedway was the most drama-filled race so far this season. Denny Hamlin won the pole for that race. Two drivers, number 16 of Greg Biffle and the number 2 of Brad Keselowski, had to go to the rear of the field due to engine changes. Joe Gibbs Racing showed their strength again with Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Matt Kenseth, all running up inside the top 5 for most of the race. One driver was looking to spoil that, former Joe Gibbs Racing driver and current driver of the number 22 for Penske Racing, Joey Logano. He and Hamlin they've had run-ins the past few weeks, especially at Bristol, when Hamlin nudged Joey into the wall, and that apparently cost Joey a very good run. Joey was noticeably upset after that race, and he confronted Denny Hamlin after Bristol. A late race restart in Fontana ensued when the number 15 of Clint Bowyer blew an engine, and that brought out a caution. Kyle Busch was the leader, followed by Logano, Tony Stewart, Kurt Busch, and Denny Hamlin. When the green flag waved, Stewart shot to the bottom of the track, trying to get around Logano. Logano then drove down to the apron, blocking Tony Stewart and causing Stewart to lose momentum. Stewart dropped way back into the field, where he finished outside the top 20. He was definitely not happy with Logano after that. A 3-wide battle for the lead came about when Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano were all fighting for that number 1 spot. Logano nudged Hamlin, getting him loose. Hamlin fought his way back up, and he and Logano were side by side as the white flag flew. Heading into the final turn of the race, Logano moved up into Hamlin, pushing him towards the wall, which caused both of them to wreck. Kyle Busch avoided the two and got around to take the win, securing Joe Gibbs Racing their first ever Sprint Cup Series win at the track. And it also led Kyle to sweep both races that weekend. Denny Hamlin, though, he had to get attended to by medical workers after his head-on crash into the wall. He was loaded up onto a stretcher and sent to a local hospital for further evaluation. I have more on Denny Hamlin in just a little bit. But back on pit road, an noticeably very angry Tony Stewart went over to Logano. He threw punches. Logano threw a water bottle. And there was definitely lots of yelling and screaming about the blocking incident. Pit crews from both teams, including the GoDaddy pit crew of Danica Patrick, who is a team member with Tony Stewart, all got into the little incident on pit road. All of this will surely spill over into Martinsville this Sunday, which will no doubt bring even more excitement to the half-mile oval. The Nationwide Series at Auto Club Speedway was not quite as exciting as Sunday's Sprint Cup race, but it definitely was worth watching. The story of the day was actually a question. Could Joe Gibbs Racing win its 9th straight race at Auto Club in the Nationwide Series? With Kyle Busch starting from the pole and coming off a win at Bristol and at Phoenix, the chances of that were looking pretty good. Busch was sitting 3rd on the final restart behind fellow Cup driver Brad Keselowski and Nationwide Championship contender Sam Hornish Jr. with 35 laps to go, and all 3 drivers had really strong cars. With just a few laps to go, Keselowski began to fall back, running out of fuel. Busch took the lead back with 25 to go, with only Hornish in his rearview mirror. Hornish put up a good battle with Busch for the win and ended up slapping the wall with 2 to go, but he stayed in contention and finished 2nd. Hornish, with a win in Las Vegas already this season, is currently leading the Nationwide Series point standings. In 5 races this season, Hornish is the only full-time Nationwide driver to visit victory lane. Busch has 3 victories in the Nationwide Series this season, and Tony Stewart started off by having a win at Daytona. There were quite a few other notable drivers from the Royal Purple 300. Junior Motorsports driver Regan Smith is sitting second in points after finishing third on Saturday. He trails Hornish by just 28 points. Smith was a lap down early in the race thanks to a flat tire, but pit strategy and hard racing got him back up front. Parker Kligerman and Austin Dillon round out the top 5 from last Saturday's race, and rookie Kyle Larson, who finished second that weekend prior in Vegas, in Bristol, can add a 6th place finish at Fontana to his resume. Elliott Sadler finished 7th despite having ignition problems early in the race. Brian Scott, Trevor Bain, and Kevin Swindle finished out the top 10. Brad Keselowski, who was actually running up front most of the day, finished 19th after skipping the last pit stop and running out of fuel on the closing laps. It's needless to say that Kyle Busch went on to win the Auto Club 400 on Sunday and swept the weekend. The question is, how many more races will he win this season in the Nationwide Series, and can he bring that success over into the Cup car as well? I guess we will have to wait and see about that. The Nationwide Series is off this weekend and won't be back on the track until April 12th at Texas Motor Speedway for the O'Reilly Auto Parts 300. That will definitely be a great race to watch, and we'll have to wait just one more week for that. We'll be back with some info on Denny Hamlin and his injury. We'll have Danica's diary and also a preview of Martinsville. Denny Hamlin is out of the car. After hitting a wall without a safer barrier in place at Auto Club Speedway, Denny Hamlin finds himself out of the car for the foreseeable future. Battling with Logano before the checkers, a nudge from the 22 sent Hamlin flying head-on into the wall. He slowly climbed out of his battered number 11 and immediately went to the ground, where paramedics put him on a backboard and took him to the infield care center. After a little bit of evaluation from them, they airlifted him to a local hospital. After a variety of tests, it was announced that Hamlin had a compression fracture in his back and would be out of the car anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, possibly more. Hamlin spoke with Dan Patrick today in an exclusive interview about the wreck, and this is what he had to say about sympathy towards Joey Logano.
I don't have any, that's for sure. I mean, the tough part for me is that, first he did mean it, then he didn't mean it, and then he did mean it. So for me, I just think he's stuck on the fence of whether it was intentional or not. Obviously, if it wasn't intentional, it was probably the worst case of car control I've ever seen as a driver.
That was Denny Hamlin talking about Joey Logano. Now, they did exchange text messages after the incident, but apparently it was short and didn't really accomplish anything. I guess the lingering question is going to be, what will happen between the two of them once Denny returns to the track? We're not entirely sure when that is. Denny hopes it is sooner rather than later. Good news is he does not need surgery. He has had back problems in the past, so when he did go to the ground, a lot of fans and a lot of people kind of had a feeling it was a back issue. So I guess we'll have to wait just a few more weeks to find out what exactly will happen between Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano. And I guess that will be interesting to watch.
That green and orange number 7, Danica Patrick.
And there is the new leader in qualifying, Danica Patrick.
This is going to be awesome!
Just a great performance by Danica Patrick.
Oh, he takes her out.
Come on. She's all right after a hard crash.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys and Danica.
I still have a heck of a lot to learn, and I still am very, very much a rookie.
The Dana Star had her best race since Daytona a few weekends ago at Fontana after she finished 26th in the Auto Club 400. She started 40th after a shaky qualifying lap, but that didn't discourage her. She almost lost a lap early, but a caution saved her and allowed the GoDaddy crew to make significant changes to her car. She gave valuable and very useful feedback throughout the duration of the race, which gave crew chief Tony Gibson the information he needed to give her a car that she pretty much loved. Midway through the race, though, her car was almost golden. She, along with a few other drivers, were on a different pit sequence than most of the leaders, and they often lost a lap during stops, but she battled to keep her car in the mix. By the end of the race, her lap times were in ranges of the top 10 and top 15 drivers. She ended in 26th place, one lap down, and that wasn't exactly what the GoDaddy team was hoping for, but it was still a positive day. In a press release after the race, she said, quote, "The car started off a little bit loose, but once we dialed that in, it was decent. At the end of the race, I really thought it was pretty good. So I felt better at the end of the race than I did in qualifying. We made big improvements. We all wanted better than 26th, but that's what we got today, and it will be better next time." Sunday's race wasn't the only thing on Patrick's agenda that weekend. She and boyfriend Ricky Stenhouse Jr. attended the 2013 Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards in L.A. the night before the big race. Patrick was up for favorite female athlete against tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams and Olympic gold medal gymnast Gabby Douglas. Patrick had won the award 2 previous times and walked away with that award again that night. She said on stage, "This is a huge award for me. Kids mean so much. When I meet you, when I see you at the racetrack and you cheer for me, it means more than anything else. It's a huge honor next to obviously all the other girls in this category. They all kick butt." End quote. Patrick spent her off weekend with kids as well. She was one of the celebrity ambassadors invited to attend the White House Easter egg roll. While there, she learned how to properly throw a football. She enjoyed a yoga class with a bunch of kids, and she also read Dr. Seuss's book, Go Dog Go, during story time. One little boy even asked her for her phone number. Here's what she had to say about the event.
This is officially my first time to the White House. I've been to D.C. in the area and some of the official buildings before, but never the White House. I am going to be reading, and I've got some nice flowers set up to soften the mood, and I'm going to be reading Go Dog Go. There's a few car scenes in the book, so it has a good message, of course. I get asked a fair amount about my message to kids, and I say it's my message to anybody, is that you have to find things that you love to do. And I feel like when you find something you love to do, you really put the work in that's needed to have a chance to get to the top of something. And so that's kind of what I always try and tell everyone, is just find what you love to do, and all else fails, at least you're doing something you like.
Back in Racing Focus this weekend, the GoDaddy team is headed to Martinsville. There are 2 big challenges this weekend for Danica as she prepares to hit the track for Sunday's Gas Booster 500 race. The first and most important challenge is figuring out how to drive this half-mile oval that her crew chief Tony Gibson describes as a tough place for any veteran to go, let alone a rookie. Patrick and the GoDaddy team have been preparing for Martinsville in a few different ways. The most recent was their test last month at Little Rock and Rockingham, North Carolina, and that track has many of the characteristics of Martinsville. But while the test was productive, Patrick and Gibson know well that the test can only help her so much, and there is no replacement for the real feel of Martinsville experience. But there is an off-track experience that Patrick was told that she can't pass up, and that is the world-famous Martinsville hot dog. A popular staple at Martinsville, the hot dog is covered with slaw, chili, fresh onions, and a few other secret ingredients. And it's all wrapped in wax paper. And that brings up the second challenge, as Gibson told Patrick that it's bad karma not to have the hot dog while racing at the half-mile track. So in addition to trying to figure out the tricky track, she also has to try and force down one of those Martinsville hot dogs. I guess that's something easier said than done for some people. I don't know if I could do it. That's a lot of things on a hot dog. I like my hot dogs just plain. But Patrick said she's actually excited for Martinsville, so that may actually help her out as she takes on that little half-mile oval. She handled Bristol pretty well in her first time there, so maybe Martinsville will be good to her. We'll have to just wait and see. They haven't been on track since Daytona, and the drivers in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series are more than ready to get back to racing. They are going from one of the biggest tracks on the circuit to one of the smallest this week as they take on the paperclip known as Martinsville Speedway. Kevin Harvick won last year's spring race at Martinsville. Harvick, a Sprint Cup Series regular, started on the pole and ran up front for 248 of the 250 laps, and that set a Truck Series record for most laps led in a race. He is competing in this weekend's event. He is driving the number 24 Chevrolet, so watch out for him. He's definitely going to be one to take the checkered flag. There have been 28 truck races held at Martinsville. The track hosted one race each season from 1995 to 2002, and then 2 events per season since 2003. Denny Setzer, Mike Skinner, and Kevin Harvick share the record for most truck wins at Martinsville. They each have 3, and their 6 truck races at Martinsville have been won from the pole, which is more than any other starting position there. Harvick did that most recently last year. The next race is April 14th. It's the North Carolina Education Lottery 200 at Rockingham Speedway. Casey Kane won last year's event there. So trucks have a couple races coming up, which will be great to see. And after having Easter weekend off, the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series returns to the track this weekend as they take on Paperclip. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is your current points leader, and he hopes to extend his lead and finally clinch that victory at Martinsville. If you take a look at his stats for this track, this is probably one of his best tracks, although he has never won at Martinsville. This weekend, if he continues running like he has been this season, he has a good chance of finally getting to victory lane. He is leading the points standings and has been on a hot streak since Daytona. Jimmy Johnson, his Hendrick Motorsports teammate, is looking to get back into the top 5 where he belongs. Johnson has been consistent for most of the season, but has run into a few issues that have him sitting 3rd in points. Following an injury that has sidelined Denny Hamlin for the foreseeable future, Mark Martin finds himself back at the track driving Denny Hamlin's number 11. And Brian Vickers will be behind the wheel of the number 55. But after this weekend, the 2 drivers will swap rides until Hamlin returns. So after this weekend, Vickers will be in the 11, and Mark Martin will be in the ever-recognizable number 55 Aaron's car. So look for those 2 definitely to perform this weekend. And something new I am trying out, I found this website called ask.fm, where you can link it to your Twitter page and people can ask you questions. I did this the other night and had a lot of racing related questions and a few that were kind of interesting. I'll leave it at that. But one of them was, who do you think will finish higher this weekend, Mark Martin or Brian Vickers? That's hard to say. Brian Vickers hasn't seen a lot of track time this season, but he is looking to take over the number 55 full time after Mark Martin leaves. So I don't know who will finish higher this weekend. That will be a great thing to keep track of on Sunday, especially with all this track time that Vickers will be getting in the number 11. All that experience is definitely going to help him in his future, but yeah, I don't know who's going to finish higher this weekend. Mark Martin is a fabulous driver, definitely one of the best, but he hasn't raced at Martinsville for quite some time, so we'll see how that all goes. Now, one more question before we call it a night from ask.fm. Who would you root for to win, Danica Patrick or Jimmy Johnson, if they're running first and second on the final lap of a race? That's a tough one, but I would have to say Danica Patrick, just because she is new to NASCAR, and Jimmy Johnson's won enough. He can give one up every once in a while. I kind of like that. Of course, Danica and Jimmy are both some of the drivers that I tend to root for. Of course, with Danica's Diary, you probably already knew that. But that was one of the questions. So if you do have a question for me that you want me to answer either on Twitter or maybe even on next week's show, just visit ask.fm/Katie Copple. You can also find me on Twitter. Just search my name, Katie Copple. There's an underscore between my first and last name, so that might throw you off, but you can surely find me there. You can also find my Facebook page. Just search Katie Copple. You'll find this show along with all of my articles that I write throughout the week. So if you want to keep up with me and keep up with racing, go ahead and find me on there. That is going to do it for this edition of NASCAR Pit Stop. Make sure you tune in next week to see what happened at Martinsville, and we'll get a little Texas preview going, because a lot of things happen in Texas. That's probably one of my favorite tracks, and I really hope to see that in person someday. Texas. It's always a lot of fun. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. You are listening to Fusion 93 KMSC, Sioux City, the student radio voice of Morningside College. This has been NASCAR Pit Stop. I am Katie Copple, signing off.